Leroy had mentioned about showing how all four members of the Godhead are identified by the name Yahweh. So we're going to briefly do that. Okay, so we're not going to go into detail into this of showing Yahweh being identified as each member, but we are going to just mention a few key passages. So, first thing is just showing that Yahweh is plural, and we know that Elohim is plural, and we have the plural God language in the Hebrew Bible study showing that. Now, the first place that the word Yahweh shows up in the Bible is in Genesis chapter 2, verse 4. And it says that these are the generations of the heavens and of the earth when they were created, in the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens. So there it says Yahweh Elohim. So we know that Yahweh is identified as Elohim, and of course, even the Shema, Deuteronomy 6:4 says Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. So that's Yahweh our gods, Yahweh is one, or united. So you have Genesis 2 verse 4 and Deuteronomy 6:4, which show that Yahweh is Elohim. So Yahweh is plural. Then the other thing that you might want to show someone is something like Genesis 19:24 that says, "Then Yahweh rained upon Sodom and upon Gomorrah brimstone and fire from Yahweh out of heaven." That's Genesis 19:24. So there we saw the first two verses, Yahweh is plural. Then the next one here, Genesis 19:24, is one passage among many that shows that there's more than one Yahweh. And then I'll get a couple passages, or at least one each, identifying each member of the Godhead. We have Psalm 103, verse 13, which says, "Like as a father pitieth his children, so Yahweh pitieth them that fear him." So there we have Yahweh identified as our Father, right? So that's one place. And then we have one other place that will be, we're going to look at two passages that are going to identify Christ as Yahweh. And there's a number of places that do this, but we'll just look at one example. One is, actually, I'll go to a more common example first. A more common example is Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10. And in that passage, what it says is, "And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications. And they shall look upon me whom they have pierced. And they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn." Now, if you read the passage there with a little bit of a broader context, going back, let's say, to verse 6, it shows quite clearly when you are reading it that the one who is speaking is the Lord, is Yahweh. So that's Yahweh, but this is a Yahweh who was pierced, right? And another place in connection with that shows a pierced Yahweh or a crucified Yahweh is in Isaiah chapter 49, verses 14 to 16, which says, "But Zion said, the Lord hath forsaken me, and my Lord hath forgotten me." And those are both Yahweh. And it says, "Can a woman forget the second child, that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? Yea, they may forget, yet will I not forget thee." So the I there is obviously Yahweh. Then in verse 16 says, "Behold, I have graven thee upon the palms of my hands. Thy walls are continually before me." So the one who has graven us on the palms of his hands is obviously Christ. Now we're going to look at one more example for Christ that's just even more clearly stated. Hebrews chapter 1, verses 5 to 10. It says here, "For unto which of the angels said he at any time, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee? And again, I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. And again, when he bringeth the first begotten into the world, he said, And let all the angels of God worship him. And of the angels he saith, Who maketh his angels spirits, and his ministers a flame of fire? But unto the Son he saith, Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. A scepter of righteousness is the scepter of thy kingdom. Thou hast loved righteousness and hated iniquity. Therefore God, even thy God, hath anointed thee with the oil of gladness above thy fellows. And thou, Lord, in the beginning hast laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of thine hands." Okay, the key part there is this, according to the writer of Hebrews, is the Father speaking to the Son. And in verse 10 it says, "And thou, O Lord, in the beginning hast laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the works of thy hands." That's actually a quote from Psalm 112, verses 25 to 27. And when we go to that's actually not Psalm 112, it's Psalm 102 is actually where it's from. And when we read Psalm 102, it's really clear who it's speaking to. So Psalm 102 says, and I'll just read a couple things so that we know. Starting with verse 1, it says, "Hear my prayer, O Yahweh, and let my cry come unto thee." So it's talking to Yahweh. Verse 12 says, "But thou, O Yahweh, shall endure forever, and thy remembrance unto all generations." So it's still clear it's talking to Yahweh. Verse 21 says, "To declare the name of Yahweh in Zion and his praise in Jerusalem." All right, so still to Yahweh and about Yahweh. And then verse 25 to 27 is where the book of Hebrews quotes, which says, "Of old hast thou laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of thy hands." And it goes on. I guess that's enough for right now, because that's the actual verse that's quoted in verse 25. So there, according to the writer of Hebrews, the Father calls the Son Yahweh in verse 10 of Hebrews 1, compared with verse 25 of Psalm 102. There's a lot more showing that Christ is called Yahweh, but those are two clear passages. Now, as far as Yahweh being our mother, we have Isaiah chapter 7, verse 11. And what it says here, and we went through this before, but this is not the reading that you'll see in the King James Bible or in any translation in English, but this is how it reads in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It says, "Ask thee a sign from Mother Yahweh, thy goddess. Ask it either in depth or in the height above." So there it's really clear. Ask a sign of thy mother, Yahweh. And there are a number of other passages which show that same thing of, whether it's "I will cry like a travailing woman" or whatever the case may be. But that's just the clearest example, probably, Isaiah 7:11. And then Yahweh being the daughter, right there's a number of passages which identify her as Yahweh, but I'll just mention one or two of them right now. One would be Psalm 99, verse 1, which talks about Yahweh who dwells between the cherubim. So that's Psalm 99, verse 1, says, Yahweh reigns, let the people tremble. He sits between the cherubim, let the earth be moved. So that's Yahweh reigning, and that dwells between the cherubim. And then we also have Psalm 80, verse 1, which says, Give ear, O shepherd of Israel, thou that leadest Joseph like the flock, thou that dwellest between the cherubim, shine forth. And you read on, it's talking to Yahweh. So there's a number of passages that talk about Yahweh who dwelt between the cherubim. Exodus 25:22 talks about the same thing. And what you can do is you can see that wisdom, it's easy to show from Proverbs 8 and Proverbs 7:4, along with the whole book of Wisdom of Solomon, that wisdom is our heavenly sister, the daughter. And when you read Wisdom of Solomon chapter 10, it identifies wisdom as being the one who was guiding Israel in the cloud, right? The one who was guiding Israel in the cloud was the angel of his presence. And the angel, it says, was in the cloud. And it said that the cloud went and dwelt upon the mercy seat. That's in Exodus 40. So you can show that if wisdom is that angel that led them in the cloud, and that angel is the one who went to dwell between the cherubim, and clearly that angel is wisdom, and which is called Hashem, the name, which is why the ark was later called the name. So that is identifying all four members of the Godhead as being Yahweh. And of course, before that, showing that there are multiple Yahwehs and showing that Yahweh is plural, or identifying a plurality of beings. The other thing that I'll mention quickly to check out is the end of the Bride of Christ series. Doug wrote an article called Who is Yahweh? Starting on page 43 of the Bride of Christ. And that identifies who Yahweh is and shows that Yahweh is all four members of the Godhead. And along with that, I'd recommend the four horns of the altars of the sanctuary, because that's really the same thing.